What's up, everyone? Welcome to the podcast, Finally, a reason to choose my psych degree, with your favorite college graduate, Caitlin. With this week's episode, I'm not alone. I have imaginary friends. Hi, hello. I hope you guys are doing well today. I'm doing just okay. And I'm going to say just okay because, unfortunately, I, at this point in time, have COVID. Don't worry, I'm doing fine. And before you get all crazy on me, I wore my mask, I got vaccinated, and I still got it. Still scratching my head on that one, but we're living, we're getting through the day. Unfortunately, I did have symptoms. Today, I am feeling so much better though, and I just want to give a huge shout out to all of my friends and family that have been so supportive. You guys have made this so much easier, dropping off food. I mean, my mom even sent me these gorgeous flowers today, so that was a little bit of a surprise, and I'm really thankful for those. So thank you, you guys. I really do appreciate everything that you've done. And so, yeah, I've just been sitting in my apartment, been feeling kind of yucky and pretty lonely, if I'm being honest. The boyfriend has Mac this week, so I've just been in quarantine by myself. I don't even have a dog to talk to or pretend to talk to, so I kind of started thinking, what do I do now? I remember talking to my sister about how when I was little, I used to have an imaginary friend. So mine wasn't necessarily a person. I normally talk to my Barbies, and before you go all Annabelle on me, no, my Barbies never murdered anybody. It never became a weird situation, but I did talk to them. I would have full conversations. It wasn't just I was playing with my Barbies. My Barbies were also playing back with me, and I would talk to them and try to feel like a sense of friendship with them. And I wanted to explore that a little bit more in this week's episode on why do we create imaginary friends when we're younger? Are certain kids more likely to create them than others? And what do they really mean? So the definition of imaginary friends is a social and psychological phenomenon where a friendship is created that is in the mind other than in reality. So there's actually a wide scope of what can be contributed as an imaginary friend. It can be anything from a child making a toy into an imaginary friend or being completely made up in their mind. This can also even be a made up animal, person, or any kind of imaginary object they create. They can also be in a group or standalone. During my research, I was able to find Marjorie Taylor and her work at the University of Oregon, and I'm going to relate to her a lot during this episode. So she found that children who have an imaginary friend relationship with an object is more likely to have a parent-child relationship with this, whereas a child who creates an imaginary friend out of thin air is more likely to have a friend-to-friend bond with that actual imaginary friend. In addition to Taylor's studies, she also found that out of 86 interviews with children, they knew that these friends weren't necessarily real. Also, that 77% of them even said, oh yeah, I just made them up. But Taylor's research was also able to find that sometimes even the imaginary friends didn't cooperate. And 1/3 of the children reported that their imaginary friend would do things to make them angry, like cut in line, pull their hair, or do or say things that they were upset about. So why do we make imaginary friends at all? There's many arguments to discuss why imaginary friends are so pivotal in a child's development. One function is for children to act out actions and situations they haven't experienced yet. It allows their imagination to help build knowledge so when they are in the real world, they know how to connect with others. And this is exactly what psychologist Vygotsky thought about, and this comes into play in the zone of proximal development, where you understand what kids can and cannot do without assistance. In this aspect, imaginary friends are allowing them to understand the world and can assist with them learning. Same goes for Piaget's theory of child development. Imaginary friends allow them to kickstart the process in social development and give them real-world examples of how they can interact with friends when they start school or meet kids at the playground. They can also act as a guide when children are trying to understand the world around them and their own emotions. They can act as someone to be there and comfort you during times of stress or anxiety. But they can also be there for someone to blame when you feel powerless. It's also been shown that they can act as kind of academic tutors. When kids start to feel low and unable in class, sometimes their friend can be there, that guiding push that they need. And a lot of times students have been shown that if they have imaginary friends, they have higher levels of positive self-talk, saying almost that their imaginary friend are the words that they should be saying to themselves in the mirror, almost like an affirmation. But are there ways to figure out who's more likely to have an imaginary friend from one kid to another? Not really. However, we can see some studies showing that females are more likely to report having them. Now, of the males that do report having imaginary friends, their imaginary friend's gender is also more likely to be male. Well, females can have a mixture of both. Another tell may be your birth order. So children that are the firstborn are more likely to have an imaginary friend than their younger siblings. This can be because younger siblings are able to use the older siblings and the activity around them to develop these social cues and don't necessarily need one. Whereas when you're the firstborn, it's just you and the parents. So you start to create these social cues in an imaginary friend that you would normally get from maybe a sibling. Another one, if you can guess, is a single child, for almost the identical reasons of being the only child. So it's totally normal, and don't be worried if you as a new parent or you're babysitting and the kid you babysit starts to talk to themselves a little bit more than normal. They're just talking to an imaginary friend that's helping them, guide them to have social cues that they'll use later in life. And as we get older, we slowly start to lose the need of that imaginary friend. We go to school, or we're in social groups where we get that social interaction that we've been craving to have ever since we were born. And there's nothing wrong with having one even when you're older, especially when times when you get a little lonely. Isn't that right? Thanks for listening to my podcast. Finally, a reason to use my psych degree. Stay tuned next week to see if I can find another.